Okay, so again, we're going to go ahead and review graphing equations in slope-intercept form. Okay, if you remember, the slope-intercept form is y is equals to mx plus b. That is the formula that we used last semester when we talked about graphing equations. Okay, uh, here the slope, the m represents our slope, which we refer to it as the change in y, so delta y over delta x, the change in x. Okay, if you remember, we looked at how it was changing from one point to the next on the graph. Okay, and then we also have the b, which represents our y-intercept, and the y-intercept is the point in which the graph passes through the y-axis. Okay, looking at a coordinate plane, we have the x-axis that is basically, the y-axis, which is the vertical line, the line that it looks like it's standing up. So this is our y-axis. Okay, so the y-intercept will always go through this line. So if I say the y-intercept is 5, then I have to look at where the 5 is and make a point there, because that's where the line is going to pass by. Then we also have the x-axis, which is the horizontal line, the line that seems to be like it's laying down. So this is our x-axis. Okay, so this is how we look at how the slope is behaving based on how it's changing on the y, the vertical, and how it's changing on the x, the horizontal. Okay, so let's look at one example, the first example, to help us go through this lesson, this review lesson. Okay, so we have y is equals to 3x plus 5. And this is with all the positive slopes. These are the positive slopes. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to identify what our y-intercept is. Okay, identify what the y-intercept is on the equation. Okay, and it seems like in this case it's the plus 5. Okay, it's always the number that it's farther away and it does not have a variable. So that is my y-intercept. Okay, and the slope is always the number that is next to the x. So in this case is the 3. Okay, so that is my slope. So the slope is the 3, which means that this is my change in y, and the change in x, well, we have to think about it. What number divides by 3 and gives me 3? So 3 divided by 1 gives me 3, so it's a 1. And that's always the case. If you have a number by itself, then the delta y is going to be the number provided in the equation, and the delta x, the change in x, is a 1. That means it's moving on the y-axis 1 unit. And it's moving 3 units on the y-axis. Okay, so moving 1 unit on the x-axis and moving 3 units on the y-axis. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start graphing. We'll go to the y-intercept. That's what we always begin with, and the y-intercept is 5. So I'm gonna go to 5 and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the y-axis, and it's at this point. So I'm gonna make my point there, which is the first point that the line is gonna go through. Now, for the slope, I'm going to look at delta y over delta x. So delta y seems to be 3. So I'm going to go 3 on the positive direction, which is up. So 1, 2, 3. And then 1 on the x, so I'm going to move 1 unit. There we go. So that's my next point. And then I have to do it one more time because I always want to have at least 3 points. So 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to move 1 on the x-axis. Okay, so those are my 3 points. Now I'm gonna use the shapes and look, we have the rectangle, we have an ellipse or circle, and then the triangle. I want the line, so that's the one that I'm gonna select. And from this point, I'm going to make sure that my line goes through all these 3 points. Okay, so that's my equation for this line. And the second example says y is equals to 1 over 2x or 1/2 x minus 4. Okay, so again, let's first identify what the y-intercept is. And it's always the number that is farther away from y. So in this case, it is the negative 4. Okay, so this is my y-intercept. The y-intercept, and the slope again is the number that is always next to x. So in this case it is the 1 over 2 or 1/2. Okay, so we have delta y over delta x. So the change in x, the change of y over the change in x. The change in y seems to be a 1, so it's moving 1 unit on the positive direction on the y-axis, and it's moving 2 units on the positive direction in the x-axis. Okay, so 1 over 2. All right, we're going to begin with graphing the negative 4. So on the y-axis, which is the vertical line, we're going to identify where the negative 4 is, just right here. And I'm going to put my dot in there. It's kind of a big dot, so let's make it a little better. Okay, there we go. Now from there, I'm gonna now move the slope. So again, I'm moving 1 unit on the positive direction on the y. So I'm gonna go up 1, and I'm moving 2 units on the positive direction in the x. So 2 to the left, to the right. 1, 2, and that's my next point. And then again, let's do one more time. 1 up for the positive 1 on the y, and then 2 to the right, 1, 2 on the x, and I can do it again, 1 and 2, and there's my, I now have 4 points. I can keep going if I want to, but you need a minimum of at least 3 points. Okay, so I'm going to go to shapes, identify the line, and I'm going to connect my points. I'm going to go and connect them all. Okay, so there we go. We have all the points connected and there, and that is my line. And I can put this little arrows to indicate that the line keeps on going. I don't think I did it up here. Okay, because the line goes on forever. So the little arrows, that's what they indicate. So the next portion, now we're talking about the negative slopes. Okay, so now our negative slopes. Okay, so the first example with involving negative slopes says y is equals to negative x plus 3. Okay, so if you notice on the positive slopes, our lines were increasing from left to right. It's going up, it's going up. So now with the negative slopes, they are going to actually be decreasing. They're going to look like that. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started by identifying our y-intercept. The y-intercept seems to be positive 3. So positive 3 is my y-intercept. And then my slope is the number next to x. And in this case, there's nothing next to x. There's only a negative. Okay, so what that tells me, and this is something important that you need to remember, is when I identify the change in y over the change in x, then I'm going to say that the negative one is the y, so negative 1, and the x is a positive 1. Okay, so my delta x is positive 1, delta y is negative 1. That means that it's moving downwards on the y and positive on the x. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph our y-intercept, which is 3. So we'll be at this point. Then I'm going to go down 1 on the x since I have negative 1. So down 1 and 1 to the positive on the x. Down 1 on the y, positive 1 on the x. Down 1 on the y, positive 1 on the x. Down 1 on the y, positive 1 on the x. And you can keep on going if you want to add more points. I believe that should be enough. So I'm basically gonna go from this point, connecting all my dots here, and I can make it as long as I want to. Now I'm gonna add my arrows to indicate that they keep going on both directions. And I have the graph of this line. And this example, now we have y is equals to negative 2 over 3x plus 8. Okay, so my positive 8 represents my y-intercept. And the negative 2 over 3 is the slope. So my delta y over delta x, my delta y is negative 2, and my delta x is 3. So that tells me that it's going down 2 on the y and 3 to the right on the x. Okay, so I have positive 8. So this is my y-intercept. And I'm going down 2 on the y, 3 to the right on the x. Okay, and I can do that one more time. Down 2 on the y, 3 to the right on the x. 1, 2, 3. And I can do it one more time. 1, 2, and 2, 3. So I have 4 points. Now it's all about connecting them with my shape. And I have, there we go, the arrow to indicate that they keep on going. And that's pretty much it for this.